Hello and welcome to the third episode of the Football Culture Podcast. Our first two episodes were based on football in Spain, football in Seville and football in Valencia. But today we're moving to another country with another very, very important football culture worldwide, and that is Italy. And what better place to start when we're talking about Italy than in Milan? Milan has two of Italy's three biggest clubs. So there's not just one huge club in the city, there's two. Milan's a city in the north of Italy, in the region of Lombardy. It's got a population of around 1.4 million people. So it's, I believe, Italy's second biggest city after Rome. It's a commercial capital, a financial capital, fashion capital, a cultural capital as well. So the north of Italy is quite wealthy compared to the south. And a lot of things happen in Milan. So it's a very important city within the country. But when we're also talking about football within Italy, it's a very important city within the football culture there as well. So I've got two guests with me today. I've got Federico and I've got Jacobo. So Federico, let's start with you. Just introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, James, thank you very much, first of all, for having me. Federico here. I've been an AC Milan fan my whole life, basically. I'm 37. Lived in Milan all my life, apart from a few years where I was living in the Netherlands. Also shorter period where I was in Argentina, but that's another story. Just happy to be here.
Okay, that's great. And Jacobo, what about you? Tell the listeners a little bit about you.
Yeah, hi James. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. Basically, I have a similar story to Federico. So I have born and raised in Milan. I had some experience abroad, but basically I've been here throughout all my life. So I'm an FC Inter fan, of course, since I was born. And basically I'm 32 and I'm really happy to be here.
Okay, that's great. So tell us a little bit about the city of Milan for people who don't know it. I mean, I'd say it's definitely a city that people should visit. What is the essence of the city of Milan, maybe say compared to other places in Italy?
That's a very good question. Well, let's start first things first. Milan is as you said, the second most populated city in Italy. And it's enclosed in, I think, the most populated region of Italy, which is Lombardy, which counts around 10 million people. One of the richest parts of the country as well. Milan and Rome are kind of the two faces of the country. Milan being the most, let's say, work-obsessed part, worst weather, mist. They make fun of us a lot about mist. And Rome being the sunny side, the historical, cultural headquarters of the country. In terms of sports, Milan is undoubtedly the capital, having the two best teams apart from Juventus, which is unfortunately there in the north as well. And also in other sports and I would say in the entertainment, in fashion, in design, all of those arts have their center place in Milan. It is a city that attracts talent. Back in the day, it was mainly from the other parts of the country. Nowadays, it attracts people from all around the world for all the above mentioned reasons. That's my part of the story. I don't know if Jacopo wants to add anything about the city.
Yeah, I think you mentioned basically the most important things, and I can say that as you said, Milan is the most global city of Italy. So we have people from all around the world, and that's also a reason why the traditions of the city, I would say, are a bit, we are losing them a bit compared to other cities because we had all this immigration from all over the other cities of the country and also from abroad, but somehow we still have that sense of community and those characters which are basically the strengths, the way we the attitude, I wanted to say, the attitude in terms of work-life balance, and also regarding sports and how we feel about sports and we feel about our football teams. So this is something we didn't lose despite the the immigration, let's call it this way, we had during the last century and this century as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. I went to Milan in 2019, and I took in the derby at San Siro. And yeah, you did get the feeling that it was a very international city. And I've met lots of Italians throughout my travels, or I live in Spain now, and when I lived in the UK, and almost all of them, if they weren't from Milan, they were from other parts of Italy. They'd spent some time working there. They'd gone there for a job. They'd lived there for a while. And they would tell me that the weather in winter is terrible. It's cold, like you say, Federico, misty, a lot of rain. But then in the summer, the heat is unbearable as well. I've heard a lot about the city. But when I went, I liked it. I thought as well, it's got a bit of a reputation for fashion. And I thought everyone was dressed quite elegantly as well, that I noticed. So you could feel that it was very much a place where people work, but also a lot of culture there as well.
The interesting thing is that nowadays, when you go to the stands in San Siro, you can hear English as much as Italian. Like there's a lot of internationals, and it's not only tourists. It's just, people living in the city that like a football game in a nice stadium. And that's a huge change in the paradigm of the stadium in Milan. Because back in the day, you could have, the odd foreigner here and there. But nowadays, it's, I wouldn't say as long as 50-50, but maybe, 70-30 would be accurate.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, it's like Barcelona. There's certain cities that are kind of international, aren't they? Like Milan's one of them, Barcelona, London, where you'll get people from all over the world. Okay, well, as you mentioned, yes, there may be culture in Milan, there may be work, but there is also football, which is a very important part of the city. So in 1899, another person who had come from elsewhere, from Nottingham, and then some other people formed a football club, which was originally Milan Football and Cricket Club. I don't think the cricket aspect has survived. And that was the club that is now known as AC Milan. So Federico, you're an AC Milan fan. How did that come about? Why are you a Milan fan? Is this something that's passed down through family, or what makes an AC Milan fan?
Well, as it always is, it has to be a family thing. Although my family is a bit weird in that regard, because my father and older brother are Inter fans. But the thing is, I have an uncle which is absolutely obsessed with AC Milan, and my mother as well, because she's his sister. And my uncle had a son, my cousin Robbie, and he was kind of my same age, 1 year older. And given my brother was not really into football that much, and my father was like, but still didn't really go to the stadium much, they were obsessed. So my parents felt it was a good decision for me to join them. And so that's how it happened. And I never looked back, and I couldn't be happier to choose AC Milan. Although I honestly have a deep respect for Inter. Cannot say the same about Juve, but because of the fact that Inter is in my family as well, it was always a mutual respect kind of relationship. So that's how it started. And I don't think there is a cure for this disease, unfortunately.
Yes. So like some listeners may know, some may not, but it's stadiums when there's a huge choreography in the stands. For example, at Real Betis against Barcelona the other day, there was a huge one for the Holy Weekend that we have here. And this comes from the Italian word tifosi, which in English basically means typhoid or diseased. Right. Okay, so it's the disease of supporting a football club and perhaps making it more important than it should be in your life. But I think there's a lot of people in this world with that disease, me included. Although there's a brilliant Arrigo Sacchi quote, which I absolutely love, which does put things into perspective, where he says football is the most important of the least important things, which kind of goes against Bill Shankly's quote a little. But I know what he means by that. And of course,
but you know that the etymology of the word tifosi comes from the typhoid disease, as you said, and the reason why it comes from that word is because when you got typhoid back in the day, of course it's not there anymore nowadays, you were getting really heated up, like a lot of fever, like crazy degrees fever. And given the fact that when you were, into the stadium and all with all your passion and all those things, you were getting heated up kind of the same way. So back in the day, the people that were getting really emotional in the stadium were called tifosi, like because it felt they were on fire. So that's how it started.
Okay, brilliant. I like that a lot. Okay, so AC Milan, first club within the city, and things went well for Milan to start with. They won trophies quite early on. They'd only existed for 2 years before they won their first title. But in 1907, there was a disagreement within the club where one of the members of the club, or one of the directors, wanted I believe a Swiss friend of his to play for the club, and this was refused because he wasn't Italian, which is kind of ironic because there was an Englishman forming the club, obviously with cricket involved in it originally, but this led to a split, and another club was formed, which became known as Internazionale, because they would let people from other countries play for them. So Inter was born. So, Jacobo, you're an Inter fan. Why Inter?
Yeah, it's a similar story to Federico, but both my mother and my father are FC Inter fans. So they passed me this passion, and I got the opportunity to go to the stadium for the first time when I was a little child, like 5 or 6 years old, and that impression is impressed in my mind and helped me to fell in love with the football team. So once I fell in love, there was no turning back point. So that was it, and from that point I started to to become an Inter fan 100% at 360 degrees. And that's it. So I have to thank my family, both for the faith and the passion, and especially for bringing me to the stadium, which was the crucial things that made me fall in love with the club. So this is my story.
Okay, so it seems like there's some huge family ties here, and that it can split families. I mean, is that correct? I mean, for example, here in Seville, you will find families where like a brother and like two brothers will support Sevilla, and the sister will support Betis because the parents have a different team or whatever. Can we find that in Milan? Does it change in families?
Yeah, definitely it happens. So it's not something so weird. You can find these kind of cases because, as Federico said, regardless the rivalry, we have mutual respect. So for some reason, there's no real war. Of course, we have rivalry. We want to be ahead of the other team of the city because it's it's a war, but not in the worst, not in, I don't know how to say, but we have mutual respect. So you can find those kind of families where a brother is AC Milan fan and the other brother is for the other team, or the parents are from one team and the children from another team. So it's not so unusual.
Yeah.
There are cities where, like, literally, I know people from Rome and they support Roma and they say, I don't have Lazio friends at all. I don't go with them. I don't want to know any of them. They are horrible people. And I think there are countless examples of this. I remember I was there for a derby in Glasgow back in the day for the Old Firm. And I saw a grandmother with their, I don't know, 4 or 5 grandsons and granddaughters, and she was teaching the worst slurs you can imagine for them to say to the Rangers fans. Like it was a serious thing. You could hear in her voice it was personal. And I think the beauty of Milan's derby is that it's not personal. Well, like the derby day, of course, we don't talk to each other, we hate each other, we insult each other. The game is over, we go back home together. Before the game, we even drink together in the same bars. Like, I think it comes from the culture of the city. Milan has always been a really decent city in this regard. Although back in the day, before the truce that we're going to maybe explore later on, there were fights and even serious ones. Still, the mentality of the vast majority of people in Milan is really decent, and you know, I would even go as far as saying a snob. Like we really know how to, you know, comport ourselves, and this is reflected as well in the football way of living. So if you compare this with any other Italian city, I don't think you're gonna find the same behavior in general.
Totally.
Yeah, I noticed that on my visit. So I came to the derby in 2019. I was with a mutual friend of ours, Francesco, and a load of Inter fans, because obviously he's an Inter fan. And one of the group that we were drinking with before the game was a Milan fan, and they were teasing him, saying Joshua's a bad person because he's a Milan fan. But it was all jokes, and he was there and part of the group drinking, and it was kind of like, yeah, we really want to beat you in the stadium today, but we'll have beers together before the match. In Bristol, where I'm from, that's not possible. Bristol City and Bristol Rovers fans can't be anywhere near each other on the derby day. And in Seville as well, even though there's a lot of banter outside of football days, you will find fans of the two different clubs in families. But on the actual day of the derby, the fans have to be separated from each other by police, because otherwise there could be trouble. So it seems like Milan's got the right idea here. I was also told as well that away fans can, well, maybe not a Juventus, but away fans can walk around the San Siro wearing colours and feel safe, whereas you can't really do that in, say, Rome, for example.
Yeah, I think this is valid for any team apart from maybe a couple. And nowadays, I would say any team. Back in the day, maybe in the 90s and in the early 2000s, and even, of course, before, it was a bit of a different discussion. But I think I can speak for Jacopo as well here. We were born into a different era. And nowadays, San Siro is a safe place. And I am pretty proud of that, to be honest. I think it's good that normal people, even with a different shirt on, can walk around the stadium and just have a good time in a great stadium and enjoy the atmosphere. Of course, when you enter into the ultras realm is a different discussion, and there are different rules. But regular fans should always be allowed to do whatever they want as soon as they respect the place where they go.
Yeah. No, I would agree. I would agree with that. So, Federico, what are the dynamics of an AC Milan fan? Because I do believe traditionally one of the nicknames for Milan fans was the Screwdrivers, because a lot of the fans came from a working class background, and a lot of people immigrants who came to Milan for work chose Milan as their team. Was that the case, and is that the same now, or has it changed?
Yeah, here as well, I think we were born into a model that was established maybe in the 60s, where there was, as Jacopo said before, a lot of immigration from the south and from the countryside. And back in the 60s, for sure, Inter Milan, also because of the fact that they really played in the city center, they were followed mainly by the higher society and the richest people in the city. Whereas AC Milan was more the working class team. And I think that one of the things that contributed to this, screwdriver legend and all of that is the moment AC Milan got relegated a couple times. First time because of the betting of some players, and the second time just because they were horrible after coming up again. And in those years, I think the spirit of AC Milan, as you see it today, was born. Like the Ultras boys were at their best. People really embraced the struggle and just went to the stadium in forces. There was a lot of support for AC Milan when the times were really, bad. And I think that stuck with us. I think that if you look at the current situation, AC Milan and Inter fans are not that different nowadays, but still, and even though I don't really like to say this, I still feel that Inter fans are coming from a higher background than we are. Like when I go to the stadium and see AC Milan, you see a lot of people from the south of Italy, you see a lot of people from Northern Africa as well, like even the second generation or third generation immigrants really are embracing AC Milan better than Inter. Also because of the political implications of the Inter Ultras, of course, which have always been a bit right-wing. So maybe the immigrants or the sons of the immigrants felt more at ease in the AC Milan environment. And I think also there is a lot of implication of the football results. Because what you see today is the result of the winning years of the Berlusconi era for us, and then the subsequent great years for Inter, the latest Moratti years. So it's also depending on who's winning and who's not, usually, on how the youngsters follow.
Yeah, interesting. And Jacobo, would you agree with that? Traditionally Inter did have a reputation as being the middle and upper classes, but is that still the same today, or has that changed?
Yeah, it changed because society entirely changed, so we cannot make this comparison with 100 years ago. So it changed, but of course, as Federico said, in some way the distinction remained on a cultural base, which means that you can still find this kind of difference. But in general, both clubs have immense popularity. So if we delve into local dynamics within the city, I would say that the distribution of supporters is generally quite balanced. However, certain neighborhoods may have historical ties to one club over another. But it's quite, there's no difference anymore as it was in the past.
It's interesting because you look at the attendances of both clubs, they're very, very similar. They both get big crowds. There's not much to choose between the two. In a lot of cities, there's a clear disparity in terms of which club is more popular than the other. In a lot of them, in some cities, that's not necessarily the case. But like you look at Barcelona are much bigger than Espanyol, better supported, etc. But if you look at Milan, it's like two huge clubs with big attendances. Neither of them seems to be more popular than the other in terms of stadium attendance. It does seem like it really is a 50-50 split within the city, more or less.
Yeah, I don't think there are many cities that have two teams as great as AC Milan and Inter. The only one I can think of is Boca and River in Buenos Aires. But yeah, Buenos Aires has like 20 teams, so it's crazy. or maybe, some teams in London have had great rides, but throughout, 1 century, it's difficult to find another city that has two great teams as much as Milan or Buenos Aires. It's the only two I can think of.
Yeah, and both with strong Italian connections as well, of course, because Buenos Aires is very, very heavily Italian influenced as a city.
English and Italian. It's always English and Italians.
Yes. Buenos Aires is a city I visited twice, and I love it. And I've seen football there. If any of the listeners, if you ever get the chance, go to Buenos Aires, watch some football. It's incredible. Particularly Boca was my favorite. But I've not been to River yet. I did have a ticket. This is for another story for another time. I did have a ticket, but I arrived just at the beginning of the pandemic. So they, on the morning of the match, they played it behind closed doors. Yeah, and I had to escape after 3 days. So I had probably about 20 matches lined up, but I didn't get to see any of them, and I left pretty quickly. But anyway, that's another story. Okay, so following the split, then, so Inter are formed. Milan go through a bit of a fallow period, and Inter do reasonably well. They win some trophies, but then we come to the 1960s, and both clubs, a bit like today, really, start to win. So Inter grabbed 2 Champions Leagues, so do AC Milan. With Inter there was Herrera and the Catenaccio, which is which is the stereotype of Italian football that sticks back to this day, the door bolt, defensive football, but very, very successful. And again, a connection to Argentina. He was Argentinian. So how do Milan and Inter fans view that period where both teams were successful at the same time? And how did that affect the rivalry between the two?
Well, I wasn't born at that time, but of course I read a lot. I saw all the footage possible available. I can tell you that it was definitely one of the greatest period of the club, thanks to the first Moratti era, because the father of the latest Moratti, which was Angelo, took over the club in 1955, and then 5 years later he put Herrera on the bench to lead the club. And that was the next 5 years were really successful, with 2 Champions League, as you said, with 2 intercontinental cups, and 3 Serie A titles in just 4 years, actually. So undoubtedly it was the golden era of the club, and it makes us well known even abroad. In the 60s it was not so easy. Of course, it was not so globally the word. So yeah, for sure it was a great period, and yeah, we have all good memories of that times.
The interesting thing is that a lot of times when I speak about AC Milan, a lot of people only remember the Berlusconi era, which is of course our own golden age for sure. But still, every time I have to say AC Milan had 2 Champions Leagues before Berlusconi was even there, like 20 years before. And we had incredible players, and Inter as well. Like Inter and Milan in the 60s were dream teams. Like on one side you had, I don't know, players like Trapattoni, Cesare Maldini, José Altafini, Lidl, Pierino Prati. Like these players were making a difference. Like the second time AC Milan wins the Champions League, it wins it against the Ajax from Johan Cruyff and Rinus Michels, and we give them 4 goals. And Pierino Prati scored an hat-trick. Like that's the level of football you had in Milan back in the day. And Inter won against Real Madrid, and that Real Madrid was the best ever. So I think it is an underestimated period because of the fact that, of course, it's so far away in time. But it's always good to remember how great Italian football has been, even in the early ages of football. And I wanted to remark that.
Yeah, I think that period in the 60s is where the Milan clubs really, ascend to being as part of the big 3, as it were. I mean, Italy's got some huge clubs, don't get me wrong. But I mean, it's very clear that the 3 biggest in terms of supporters and in terms of trophies are the 2 Milan clubs and Juventus. But we'll come on to the rivalry with them later. So in the 60s as well, the ultras culture. This is where the ultras movement starts, more or less in Italy, I believe. So Federico, what was the origins of the Milan ultras?
Well, I think there are a lot of myths around that, and I think that there is no sure story, apart from the fact that we know that from a certain moment in time, a few kids just started going together to the stadium with banners and flags. The first group which was born, and I think it is, if not the first in the whole country, at least the first one in Milan, is Commandos Tigre. They were born in 1967, and 1 year after, Fossa dei Leoni was born. Fossa dei Leoni takes his name from the Lion's Pit, which is the nickname it was given to the section they were going to into San Siro. A lot of speculation is made about political implications in the way the ultras movement was born in Italy, and it could be true in some ways, although at least for the Milan side, it was never publicly made on one of the 2 political sides. You had right wing and left wing, although left wing was for sure a bit more visible. But basically, the stadium after a while became basically the transportation of what was happening in the streets just into the stadium and with the football passion. And right after that, the first Inter group, boys, son, was born as well. And the nice thing, the fun fact is that originally boys and Fossa dei Leoni were staying in the same exact spot. So the first derby days, you can imagine, were a bit chaotic, to say the least. And after a while, they decided to move to the northern side, where they still are today.
Okay, interesting. So Jacobo, the Inter Ultras culture at the beginning. What do you know about the groups at Inter? Were they formed in the 60s as well?
Yeah, the first group, as Fede mentioned, was the boys in 1969. So 1 year after the main group of AC Milan Ultras, which was Fossa dei Leoni, and 2 years after Comandos Tigre. But yeah, basically it was the same process. So a group of guys that was really, into it, decided to form a group to support, to bring some color, some atmosphere, and make some aggregation, to be together, supporting the team together. And this had a development. So in the following years, different groups arise, such as Ultras 1975, and then many others. So it started, a process where many other groups were gathering together in order to create a real fan base, which were always available to support, always available to follow the team, no matter what, no matter the city, no matter anything. So that was the main thing that helped to create the movement.
Okay, and so both of you have been in Ultras groups in the past, yeah?
Indeed.
Yeah. So what? Let's give the listeners like sort of an idea of what it's like to be in an Ultras group. So what does being an Ultra mean to you, and what does it bring to your life?
From my side, I can tell you that despite everything that's been written from newspapers or whatever, of course there are some, black sides, let's say, but my experience was full of good things and values above all. So I learned a lot of values, and I, during my experience, I had the possibility to get in touch with many different guys, young guys, older guys, whatever, with the same passion and same attitude, which was basically positive. So the best thing, in my opinion, was the way you connect with people, and the way you how can I say, you create a connection, and you share experiences, good and bad ones, and that's something that cannot be explained somehow, but it will always remain in my heart somehow, because it was really a good experience from a human perspective. Besides everything that it's the bad things that are arising recently, but during all the Ultras movement. So I think there are plenty of good things and good sides from the movement. That's for sure.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think that first things first, the Ultras movement, and specifically an Ultras group, is a social leveler. Like, you have people from all different backgrounds just joined and being equal in front of the support of the team and the creation of the group and the support of the group itself. And at the same time, you create such bonds that you cannot believe are possible. Like, you really start living together when you are really into an Ultras group. You wake up thinking about it, you spend your whole day thinking about it or doing something for that. Your whole money goes there, your whole attention goes there. up to a scary point. Like sometimes you feel like you're doing nothing else but football and ultras. Like that's your life from that point onwards. And I think that in my experience, even though my personal experience had a bit of a bitter end, there is no regret. Like I would do everything I did exactly the way I've done it, because it made me feel alive in a way that I really could not explain. It's unbelievable. And the away days, the long bus rides, those things that a lot of people don't really understand. And you know, you get a lot of questions like, why are you guys doing that to yourselves? Like living around, you know, highways for 2 or 3 days straight in a rusty bus with a lot of criminals and bad people. And it's like, I could not ask for anything else. Like it's the best feeling ever to be in that place in that time.
Yeah, it's like I try to explain to people that don't like football that football can give you so many things that aren't just about the game. I mean, I like the game of football. I love watching football, but it's not just about watching football. You know, it's the camaraderie you have with people, the fact you meet people from all walks of life. You know, we don't have an ultras culture in the UK, but you meet people at away games or, you know, just from going to the home games in bars or in the stadium itself that you probably wouldn't cross paths with otherwise. And you become friends because of a shared passion or a shared interest. And it becomes a social thing as well as just watching, you know, a match. It becomes part of your social life, and you meet people that you might have things in common with. You don't have so much in common, might just be the football you have in common. But it's you know, the strap line for this podcast is not just about the football, and it's to give, you know, to let some people know who might not know the you know, being a football fan and following a football team is not just about watching football. It's deeper
not
than
at
that.
all. Not
yeah,
at all.
And the ultras culture seems to embody that.
And I think the missing piece is that when we are young, we try to belong as much as possible. We want to feel part of something bigger than us, because in the end we are social animals. And I remember when I was a kid, like 8 or 9 years old, the first times I was going to San Siro, of course I was not going into the ultra section, but the focus was there. Like I was looking more at the stands than at the pitch sometimes, because, you know, the noise and the colors and the movement, it had a weird appeal to me. Like it was dangerous and at the same time really, really, really appealing to me. And then when you become a teenager, I mean, going to a place where there's a lot of risk, there's a lot of violence, there's a lot of excitement and noise and people and you know, all the smells, is paradise. So that's why a lot of youngsters still get into it nowadays, although the movement is not as strong as it used to be, because you cannot resist that. It's really difficult to resist that when you're a teenager. And then I think there comes a time when you're getting older where you feel maybe you don't really belong there anymore. Even maybe your spirit is there, but your body cannot follow through, or you just don't want to put that effort anymore because the priorities in life can change. But still, it's a magical thing to try. Once in a lifetime, you need to try that.
Yeah, and in regards of what you were saying, James, I would add that, at least in my experience, when you are really into this world, at a certain point, you don't really care about, I wouldn't say football, but at least the result of the game, because the friendship you have established, it's so everlasting, it's so strong that you really don't care about anything else. You just want to be there no matter what. And this is something really strong. So that just wanted to add this, because I think it, you know, you can have a bit of context of what you can reach in terms of passion.
Yeah, no, I would concur. I mean, we often see when we see in media talking about ultras and ultras groups, we often hear the bad things: violence between ultras groups. You know, ultras going down to the training ground to complain to the players for bad results. You know, criminal activities, that kind of thing. We hear about these headlines, but there's another, like everything in life, there's another side to it. A lot of good things go on, you know, like Atalanta, a club, Bergamo near Milan, you know, they do a lot of things for charity charity work in within their city, and that's a positive thing. So that sometimes I guess all the positive stuff doesn't make good headlines for newspapers and stuff like that. So we don't hear about it so much. But yeah, okay. So in the 1970s, after the golden era of the 60s, maybe a little bit of a fallow period for both clubs. I mean, not a huge amount of trophies won, but I guess by the 70s, with the ultras movement, there would have been a lot more violence on the terraces between groups, because I believe there was an escalation of things which led to a truce called in the late 1970s. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, as I said before, sometimes the ultras movement was a continuation of the political movements that were really strong in the 60s and 70s as well. And so the same weapons that were used between, left wing and right wing were used against the football rivals sometimes. And we got to a point, and again, here we are speaking about the background we got from history books. We were not born there. So what we can say is what we heard from others or read. But still, the situation was so serious in the derby days that it was not just the derby days anymore. Like, there was always an occasion during the year, during the week, to find each other in certain places, in certain bars, or even where the different groups were meeting for their weekly meetups. Sometimes the other team was doing some roundups with weapons and knives and stuff like that. So the situation became so serious that the breaking point, and again, this is not sure 100%, but they say it was 1983. There was this summer tournament where Milan and Inter were both playing, and it was a friendly match. There was a guy which was shot, and then another one who went to the hospital and died later on. And after that, they basically meet. The history says that the Inter fans went to the ultras on the other side of AC Milan, and they said, "Can we have a talk?" And they basically established the truce that still holds after 40 years. And I think that made us unique in regards to that. And after that, and again, we were born into this model. We were born going to the derby knowing that nothing could happen. Even though you were, insulting each other, the derby was just a calm day, no police around, no problems, never.
Yeah. That violent period of the 60s is for sure strictly related with the political and social situation. So it was just a reflection what was happening into the stadium environment. It was just a reflection of the social condition, which was really violent, and so it was brought into the stadiums. But that was it. And as Federico said, there was this kind of armistice in order to calm down, because otherwise the life in the city would have been really, really tough, because our city is the second largest in the country, but still not so big. So you can find rival fans at any corner of the city. So it will have begun a sort of really city war, and so they wanted to probably avoid this bad situation.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a great believer that often football and what happens at football reflects society. So it's like you're saying, there was a lot of political problems. I mean, if people want to look at the history of Italy, 60s and 70s, there was a lot of social unrest, a lot of extreme political groups around. And football often reflects what's going on in society. There's a quote when Margaret Thatcher met in the 80s. England had a huge problem with hooliganism, and Margaret Thatcher met Bobby Robson, the England coach, and said, "Mr. Robson, what are we going to do about your hooligans?" And he just turned around and said, "They're not my hooligans. You're the Prime Minister. They're your hooligans. I'm a football coach. I don't run the country. They're your problem. They're your hooligans. I just coach the football team." So it's like he put her in her place there. Thatcher didn't like football. She was not a football fan, and she didn't understand it. So she was never popular with football fans anyway. But it was reflecting Britain in the 80s was quite a divided country at the time. So yeah, it reflects in that. So it always seems to me then that if the authorities couldn't solve a lot of the problems within the country, then it looks like, you know, another positive thing for ultras groups is, you know, the ultras leaders getting together and solving a problem within Milan, you know, at the football, calling a truce between the two groups, so there was no further violence. So now they won't battle each other on a physical level with violence, but the battle is now in the stadium. No, at the derby with the choreography.
Indeed. And I think that, so even together with the choreographies, there were a lot of years where we were exchanging messages from stand to stand on banners, of course. And it became a bit of a challenge, like a race in a way of who was getting the best banners, the most hilarious ones. And I think this is something it's not done that much anymore. And I think it was really amazing to watch. Sometimes we were laughing, even though maybe the insult was against us. The joke was so good, we were laughing as well. And that was a bit of another way to tease each other during the derby days. And when it comes to the choreos themselves, I think both sides have given the whole movement some of the best examples of that. With AC Milan, I think the golden era was the latest Fossa days. I think for some years we did incredible things. And then I think Inter had a few years where they were really on top of the whole movement with that. And then later on, I think lately, especially AC Milan has gotten back on top a bit. I think we pulled up great things. But I was part of the choreo preparation for a few years. And let me tell you, there's way more effort than you expect to be behind those choreos. Like there's people meeting up weekly for months building those. And then, which is, I think, another experience to try once in a lifetime. The day of the derby, you get to enter San Siro like 12 hours before the game to set it up all. And you spend the whole day together with your friends, and you have lunch together and you drink beers, and you watch San Siro, slowly mounting and the atmosphere building up. It's a derby day atmosphere that I don't think much people can relate to, but I remember it as one of the best.
Yeah, you describe it perfectly, the emotion, you can feel it. And in regards of the choreography, AC Milan fans were sort of pioneers, because they had some guys that were really, ahead of times, because when there was not this kind of technology, they already made some fantastic choreographies, because they had some other tools, but basic tools, but they managed to make some astonishing things. So they were really, really good in this. And then also our fans made some great jobs, and still still today we are, I would say that both fans are really good in making great choreographies. So yeah.
Yeah, I'd agree. I went to the derby in 2019 at San Siro. Milan were at home, so they had a bigger tifo than Inter, because they were in the away section. So for those that don't know, obviously the two clubs share San Siro, but Milan, their main end is the Curva Sud, and Inter is the Curva Nord. So when the derby is played, the away team will get a section of their curva, the top two tiers, and the rest of the stadium will be for the home team. And both clubs, both sides, when I went there, did a tifo. Milan's was bigger because they were at home, super impressive. And Inter had a smaller one, but it was still impressive. So it really is worth going to the derby. The atmosphere is great as well, noisy. And we'll talk about San Siro as a stadium a bit later, but I really would recommend anyone go to the Milan derby. It really is fantastic. Whoever's at home is really, really good. Okay, so in the early 1980s, so one thing that Inter do have over Milan is that they've never been in Serie B. Inter have been in Serie A for their entire history. Milan have been in Serie B twice, as we touched on before, relegated as a punishment originally for a match fixing scandal, and then because the team wasn't so great. Now Berlusconi takes over in '86, and the truly golden era of Milan then takes hold. European Cups, Van Basten, Gullit, Rijkaard. I remember all that. I'm old enough, sadly, to remember that, and it was an incredible side. How, Jacobo, were you around when there was that incredible Milan side of the 80s and 90s?
Sorry, James, I couldn't hear you actually.
Yeah, so do you remember that great side of Milan side of the 90s?
Yeah, they were astonishing. Definitely better than us. We had some. Actually, we won a great league at the end of the 80s, so in 1989. Mm-hmm. But at the same year, they won the Champions League, so they were definitely better with great players, and also a club structure which was definitely better. So in those times, the AC Milan was on top, and Inter had to find its way, and it took a long time to find the right way. But if we go 20 years later, we finally found the solution to become great as we were in the 60s, let's say, to make this kind of comparison. But for over 20 years, AC Milan was definitely at a higher level than Inter. On every level.
I remember it. So we had Italian football being broadcast in the UK from the early 90s. And I think it's fair to say Inter didn't have a great 90s, whereas Milan had a fantastic 90s. So how difficult was it being an Inter fan in the 90s when Inter's having one of the worst periods in its history and Milan's having its greatest?
It was very difficult, to be honest, because of course they were happier than us always, and also that generations was helped to be AC Milan fans because they were winning everything and they were stronger than us. So that generation of children, I would say that there are most AC Milan fan than Inter fan, more AC Milan than Inter fan, also because of that. This can be compared to these recent years, the last recent years, where the thing changed, but at that time it was very difficult because you cannot say nothing to them. You couldn't say nothing to them because they were better. That's it. So we had a lot of unforgettable defeats. We had bad periods in terms of derby results as well. So they were stronger. They were powerful. They were successful, and that was tough, really tough.
Yeah, I was having a conversation with a friend the other day, and I'd say, from what I remember, the Barcelona team under Pep was probably the best club side I've ever seen. But after that, in my lifetime, that I've seen would have been the Milan side of the late 80s and 90s. Federico, what's your reflections on that period?
Well, of course, I was too young to remember most of it. I think that the first memory I have of AC Milan is the Champions League final against Barcelona in '94, which I watched sitting above my kitchen table, that I remember. But the previous period, actually, I mean, a lot of AC Milan fans were regretting the fact that they were not there for the golden age of the Berlusconi era, because we didn't envision there could be the Ancelotti era later on. Like, we never felt we could be on top again in that way. But I think that what I can say about the first, the early Berlusconi days is that despite not having the best opinion of the man himself, for a million reasons, I think he brought a futuristic vision of what football could look like. And I think it was the first time after ages that the Italian football could break that catenaccio kind of heritage of playing defensive football. Like, I remember watching the semifinals, the two games against Real Madrid from '89, where in Madrid I think we drew 1-1, and then there was a goal by Gullit, which was good, like by 1 meter, and it was given offside because, of course, Real Madrid. And then on the way back, we managed to win 5-0 in San Siro. But even in the Madrid game, like you could see that the people were cheering, watching the level of football AC Milan was able to put on the ground. Like Maldini himself was a left winger that nobody had seen defensively and offensively in football, and the team was playing within 20 meters. Like, we were unbelievably good at that time, and it was all coming from, of course, Arrigo Sacchi, which had his own football ideas, and he would take no prisoners. It was the way I want it or nothing. And as well, Berlusconi backing him up. Like, he was chosen by Berlusconi because he had strong ideas of playing good football and winning in terms of quality before result. And the culmination of that is, I think, 7 or 8 year stretch where we won final after final after final. And I think most probably it has been the best version of AC Milan ever in the history.
Yeah, I think so. It's one of those things. I've got some friends here in Seville that are Leicester fans, and they're very, very aware that they've seen as good as it's ever going to get. Like, they're never going to see Leicester win the Premier League again, probably. They've seen the best season they could possibly see, or the best period. So I guess, I mean, we never know in football. Things can change, and it can be cyclical. But yeah, it's going to be pretty difficult as an AC Milan fan to see better than that era. It was pretty incredible. Not just, the foreign players that were there, but, Maldini to come through, Baresi to come through, Donadoni,
Which is another fair thing to say. That was mostly an Italian team. Italian players coming from the youngster teams, and they were there their whole life since they were kids in AC Milan. Something that today you just don't see anymore.
Not only Italian, but from Milan as well. So
exactly.
It's really great connection with the city, which is something we are completely losing nowadays. But back in the days, it was really, really great.
Of course, and you have Franco Baresi at Milan, who everyone knows about because he's, in my opinion, the best defender I've ever seen. But of course, his brother was at Inter during the same period. So we say that the two clubs can split families. Well, it split two brothers there. One's playing for Milan, one's playing for Inter. So,
and the interesting thing is that back in the day, in the early days of their career, Beppe Baresi was the good one. Like, Franco was the little one. Nobody really wanted him. And actually, Inter didn't want him when he tried. He said, no, you're too little. You're not going to grow. We don't have anything to do with you. Bye. Well.
Well, yes, maybe a decision that led to Inter's terrible 90s. But as we touched on, it wasn't to last. I mean, I remember watching Italian football, and it used to be like, oh, when are Inter going to win Serie A again? It was like in the 90s, must have been terrible for an Inter fan, because not only were Inter not doing too well, Milan were winning everything. But when Milan weren't winning everything, it was Juve. So it was like, of course, Inter contest the Derby d'Italia with Juventus. We'll come on to other rivalries in a moment. But after, post-millennium, Inter have returned to previous glories. Champions League under Mourinho, titles under Mancini. Jacobo, what do you put that down to? How did Inter take themselves from the terrible position they were in the 90s to back winning trophies again?
Yeah, well, actually, the start of the new millennium was far from ideal, to be honestly. However, things began to change with the first trophy won after many years, including 2 national cups and 2 Italian Super Cups, because of the project that were established by the president, which was Massimo Moratti, so the second Moratti era. And so we started growing and win some trophies. Then the break point was definitely the Calciopoli scandal in 2006. So it was a turning point in Italian football, and from that moment we embarked on a successful and satisfying winning cycle, culminating in the aforementioned historic treble in 2010. So that was our history in the third millennium.
Yeah, I mean that treble was an incredible achievement considering Pep's Barcelona was at its peak at that time as well. So to be able to beat them en route to winning that was an incredible achievement. And yeah, as you say, Calciopoli calls Juventus were relegated to Serie B. I remember reading in a newspaper that a betting tipster said put some money on Juventus to be relegated, and I remember thinking, waste of money. They'll never send Juventus to Serie B. It's too corrupt. They'll never send Juventus to Serie B, but of course they did.
Yeah, we all thought the same back in the day. Like, it's never gonna happen, never ever, and then it happened.
Especially in Italy, but in the end, something happened at least.
Well, this is it. I mean, let's briefly touch on scandals in Italian football. So, obviously, there's been match fixing scandals down the years. A friend of mine went to see Catania play a match years ago, and his friend who he was with, after 10 minutes, said, "This match is fixed. It's 0-0." And my friend's like from England, and he's like, "What are you talking about? Like, how do you know that?" He said, "I've seen it before. It's fixed." And he was like, "I don't know." Anyway, it was 0-0. And then years later, this match was being investigated for a match fixing scandal. So his friend was right. How rife do we think this is in Italy? I mean, there is a stereotype that this goes on in Italy, and it's been proved with some scandals, but how bad is it?
I don't know, to be honest. I think we can't say something specific. I would say that especially in lower categories, there's a lot of match fixing because of the money you can earn as a lower category footballer. So you don't have a great salary, and so match fixing it's a kind of solution to earn some more money. But that said, I really don't know. I think, honestly, personally, I think there is something, but I cannot tell you how much and how is it impacting actually our football. That's my opinion, let's say.
Yeah. Federico, what do you think?
I have to admit that I'm a bit delusional on the topic, mainly because I want to try to keep my passion for the sport. And if I try to, distance myself from those thoughts of everything is fixed all the time, I can enjoy it better. But, there is an inner voice that says, down the line, something is fixed, and some decisions are taken beyond our casualty that we like to believe in. So, I mean, there's a lot of money, and as Jacobo was mentioning fairly, in the lower categories, that money can make a difference between having a team or not next year. That cannot be, underestimated. It is visible that there's a lot of implication of money, and I'm sure there's something going on. But again, in a very childish way, I hope at least that at the highest level where we belong, having more control, it is as fair as it can be.
Yeah, I would think that, yeah, like you say, in the lower divisions, there's more temptation for the players. And I think that Calciopoli and Juventus getting relegated to Serie B, I think that may well have made a lot of people think twice about getting involved at the top level with that kind of thing because it took Juventus quite a while to recover. And then they had that era where they were winning constantly. Glad to say, as a neutral who likes watching Italian football, this is nothing against Juventus fans, but I'm quite pleased that they're not winning every year now because it's making it more interesting for everyone else. But so we'll now, speaking of Juventus, we'll touch on them now. So Inter have the Derby d'Italia, so the Derby of Italy with Juventus. Traditionally, this was because Inter and Juve were the two most successful clubs, although Milan, after the Berlusconi era, have caught up with Inter with regards to that. And also, Turin's not too far away from Milan, and they're obviously two big clubs. But Federico, Milan have a rivalry with Juventus as well. So this is, I believe, this is not just an Inter and Juve thing. Jacobo, what's the rivalry like with Juventus?
Well, just to give you a bit of context, the term Derby d'Italia was coined in the 60s, I believe in 67, by a famous journalist called Gianni Brera. And the reason why was exactly what you were mentioning, and also because of the two clubs were owned by two really strong families, which were the Agnelli for Juventus and Moratti for Inter. So that was a journalist term, but it doesn't mean that AC Milan does not have a rivalry with Juventus. It's more about cities. So Milan against Torino, and in this case Juventus. So both clubs have a big rivalry, also because, mainly because I would say we always compete to win, historically, to win the league against them. So this is the main reason why we had this rivalry. Then, of course, it develops in many other aspects, but the historical reason was economic, was a powerful reason, was a trophies reason, and this kind of stuff.
Okay, Federico, what's the Milan perspective on the rivalry with Juve?
Well, I have to split the personal opinion on this from the generic public's opinion. I think that Inter and Juve have a worse rivalry than Milan and Juve. Like, Inter and Juve really despise each other. And I think, in a way, and I'm not sure if it's true or not, but we go back to the discussion about the higher society against the people coming from the south and the outer skirts. Inter and Juve are really like north against south, in a way. Like, it's the nobility against the poor people. And Milan and Juve kind of share the working class heritage, but in two different ways, because AC Milan has its roots deeply rooted in Milan. Like, the history of the Milan fan base is in Milan and always will be in Milan. And then, of course, the popularity and the Berlusconi era made it a global brand. Juve was born in Torino, but I think Torino doesn't even have a fraction of the fan base of Juventus. Juventus is followed more in Milan than in Torino, and it is followed way more in the south of Italy than in the north of Italy. And what absolutely pisses me off about Juventus, and that's why I have more respect for Inter, is because you have so many Juve fans in Milan, where you already have two of the best teams of the country, you have one of the best stadiums in the world, you have everything you need to have a great football experience, and yet you support Juve, which is a team of no land, which wins. That's the only reason why a lot of people like it. They win. They just are the team for winning, like the social payback team. And that pisses me off so much in Milan. Like, I cannot stand the fact that you live in Milan and support Juve. It's unacceptable.
Yeah, it's interesting. I read a really good book on a history of Juve, and Agnelli, he was very smart. He tried to create a modern super club very early on. You know, a lot of the history, he was doing a lot of things that modern club owners, are trying to do now, but he was doing it a long time. He wanted Juve to become the team of the country. He didn't really care about them being the team of Torino. And when I went to Turin, I actually I went to the derby between Milan and Inter. And then later in the week, I went to some other matches. One of them was Torino against Milan. And I really loved that experience, actually. I enjoyed it at Torino. And I don't know, maybe I got it wrong. Maybe it was just my experience. But walking around the city, there just seemed to be a lot of more Torino fans within Turin than Juve. I didn't see so many Juve shirts. And
that's the thing, because Torino holds the heritage of the city's football culture, let's say. mainly, of course, because of the great team from the late 40s, which was in that unfortunate plane crash in 49, but also because it really has a strong bond with the city since its foundation. There is the original stadium is called Philadelphia, and it is nowadays abandoned basically, but still every year they go there and celebrate the birthday of Torino. Like you can really see a bond with the city, which Juve doesn't really have.
Yeah, I went to the old stadium. There's only a small part of it still there, but I went to have a look. It's, I don't know. You know, when you just get a vibe, a feeling, and when I went to Turin, it just felt more of a Torino. The city was more Torino. It just felt Torino was more of the city, and Juve. There was you know, I saw a few Juve shops, you know, stores, you know, but I don't know. It just felt more of a Torino place.
Yeah, and that's totally confirmed by also Torino citizens, so and Torino fans, and also some Juve fans, maybe the most honest, but it's basically confirmed by the society of Torino. So Torino, it's a Torino city.
And it shows you that sometimes winning doesn't prevail over history. Like if your father is a Torino fan and Juve is winning every year, you support Torino. You don't care.
Yeah,
that's the beauty of it. That's the beauty of football.
I bought as a souvenir a Toro Kappa tracksuit because I liked tracksuit top because I like the look of it, but also I enjoyed the visit because I just thought you've got this huge super club within your city, but you don't care. You support Torino, and I like that. That was cool. So who do you prefer to beat then? Do you prefer to win the Milan derby, or do you prefer to beat Juventus? Where does the hatred lie?
Well, to me, the derby is always better because it has the best atmosphere. Like Milan-Juve is a nice game, and on the pitch, sometimes it has been the best game in the Serie A. But the atmosphere that you feel when you win a derby and you are away, so you are alone against them, it's the best feeling in the world.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. So I would choose the Milan derby as well. The supremacy of the city, let's call it this way, is something very, very important, and you know, it transmits you very big emotions. So it's not comparable. It's another feeling, different feeling.
And I don't know, actually, James, it might be the same in the UK, I imagine, but like the best part of winning the derby is the day after. When you go to the bar and the bartender is Inter and you're like, what's up, man? How was yesterday? And then you back in the day, we had people at school or people at work and you just make fun of each other. And that's the beauty of living the city derby, because you live it every day, even though not in a violent way, but it's those little slangs, those little inside jokes that make the rivalry worth it every day.
Yeah.
When you asked me about how it was the bad period of Inter when we do not win anything, etc. Just to give you an example, I went to school after in 2002 after we lost the National League at the last match day, in a very undecent way. And the next day I went to school and my professor make jokes about me because we didn't won the league, and we were struggling to win the league after 16 years back in the day. So that was really impactful on me, and I still remember this episode nowadays. So just to give you a bit of context on how we live this.
Yeah, it's similar in the UK. I mean, I'm a Bristol City fan, so we have the Bristol derby against Bristol Rovers. We haven't played each other for like 20 years because Rovers have been lower down. But I remember it is about making fun of or having the bragging rights, as we say. And here in Seville, I mean, I go watch Real Betis. And just the other day, I had a kid in one of the classes that I teach saying, "Teacher, if Seville wins at the weekend and Betis don't win, then we go above you in the league." You know, and it's just he just looks up on his English class. He's been studying the table, you know, and just, you know, they were winning 3-1 at Atletico yesterday. And I was thinking about what he was going to say to me next week, but luckily they lost in the end. So, yeah. Okay, so you've got the rivalry with Juventus and each other, but Federico, what other rivalries does Milan have, and who with and why?
So there are a few, and the fun fact is that most of our most heated rivalries back in the day were our friends. If you look at Napoli, Roma, Genoa, which are undoubtedly three of the worst rivalries we have, we used to be friends with them back in the 60s and 80s and 70s, more than 80s. And then things happened. Those friendships were broken and they became absolute enemies for years. Other than that, we have Atalanta, mainly because we are friends with Brescia, which is the biggest rival of Atalanta. So, the enemy of my friend is my enemy as well. And I think those would be the worst ones. Personally, I wish Sassuolo would disappear from the face of the earth because they are not a football team. But other than that, I think Verona would be another one, mainly because they were friends with Inter, because of the political thing, mainly. And because of the fact that they robbed us twice of our league title within the span of maybe 20 years, 18 years. So we lost the critical games in Verona, and they were chanting about that for decades. So that's why we hate them.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, for those who don't know, in Italy, there is a lot of friendships between different groups of supporters. There is in Spain as well, to a degree. We don't really have this in the UK. We hate every other club apart from our own. But there are friendships that are formed with clubs in other countries. So, for example, Bristol City have a friendship with Willem II in the Netherlands. Okay, Jacobo, what about Inter? Who are Inter's other rivals?
Yeah, similar to what happened to AC Milan. Now, one of the most the biggest rivalry is with Verona, because we were friends, but in 2000, so at the beginning of the third millennium, the friendship was broke, and so from that point we have a great rivalry. But the most strong rivalries are definitely with Napoli, and I would say also Rome. As you can imagine, it's the main reason are social and cultural, for evident geographical reasons. As you might know, we have so many differences within the country, and the main split is between the north and the south. Just to summarize, so we have definitely a strong rivalry with Napoli and with Rome as well. Also because we are friends of Lazio, the other city of Rome. So this is another reason, and then we have less important rivalries, but as well with Atalanta, a sort of regional derby. However, even though Atalanta is it's not at the same level of Inter or Milan, nowadays is doing great, but historically they are not comparable in that sense. But regionally they were strong, and they always had a strong fan base and a strong ultras. So we had a strong rivalry with them. And also I would add Bologna, which is a club we always had some issues, let's call it this way.
Yeah, I think Inter and Bologna were rivals for titles when a long time ago when Bologna were in the question when it came to winning titles. And for those that don't know, Bergamo, where Atalanta are based, is very close to Milan. And also, as Federico said, Brescia is not very far from Bergamo, and Brescia is the rival of Atalanta. So, I think it's fair to say that Inter and Lazio is probably the strongest friendship in Italian football. Would that be fair to say?
For sure, one of the longest.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's the one of the strongest, but the longest, yes.
Yeah, I'd say it's probably the most well known. I think it's fair to say quite a few people know about the Inter and Lazio friendship. Okay, so Obviously, you both share a stadium, San Siro. So now, from my perspective, I've been to San Siro once, and from the outside, I think it's just an incredible sight. It looks like a spaceship, like it's come from outer space. A bit tired inside, maybe, not as modern inside, but great views of the pitch, etc. What does San Siro mean to you guys?
Home.
Everything, almost everything.
I still can remember the first time I went with my father, which was Inter, as I said before, and he brought me to the stadium first time with him. I remember walking the stairs up to the second tier and seeing the light getting bigger and bigger from the stairs, and then getting into the window and watching the pitch, which was so green and bright. And I cannot take it away from my mind. Like, I felt like I was, I don't know, in paradise. It was so big, especially when you're young, you don't realize how big it is, but still. And I think we underestimate how big San Siro is for Milan. Like, when I think about getting into a war, potentially, like, the two things I think first when I look at, Milan being bombed are the Duomo and San Siro. Like, these are the two monuments that I wish are there forever in my city, because they are the two statements of who we are: workers and artists. And San Siro, I don't have any tattoos, but the moment San Siro will be destroyed, which is around the corner, unfortunately, that's the tattoo I'm gonna get. Like, it's forever in my mind.
Yeah, it's really an amazing stadium. For those who haven't had the chance to go there, they must do it before there will not be any more. So I encourage them to go there, because it's really not only a great venue, but also the atmosphere that it's created by the fans, both of AC Milan and Inter. It's really unique. I don't think you can find that kind of atmosphere in that kind of stadium somewhere else, to be honest. So, for example, if you go to Madrid, Bernabeu, great stadium, not great atmosphere. If you go to most of the UK stadiums, of course, there's a different culture, and it's great, and I enjoyed it a lot, but it's not the same in terms of atmosphere. So the two things combined makes San Siro experience unique, definitely.
Yeah, I'd agree. It's cavernous in the sense that it's a huge stadium, but it's noisy. The noise gets held in. The fans make a noise. The ultras don't stop singing on the curvers for the whole game.
And I have to say this, because so San Siro during the summertime especially is also used as a concert venue. And I was used in my life to go to the upper tiers in the stadium, so to see it from above. But the first time you step on the grass, on the pitch, you realize how San Siro truly big, and it's enormous when you look at it from the downside. It's so huge, and as you said, it's really cavernous. So I cannot imagine how it is for a player to be there on a big ticket game, Champions League draw, or something like that. Like, it has to be one of the best experiences in a whole career. And in fact, I remember, well, it's known that many players in Inter and Milan struggled because they couldn't face San Siro. Like, the pressure was unbearable and they were failing. Shard de Ketelare, which is nowadays amazing for Atalanta, is a good example. Like, he was the best summer transfer, the most paid player. He was well wanted by the whole crowd. Nobody really booed him or whatever, even though he was playing bad. And still, he couldn't perform the way he's performing now. San Siro can take a toll on you if you don't know how to react to that.
Yeah, it's a huge stadium, and I would urge anyone to get there, like you say, before they move. So yeah, both clubs are building a new stadium. What's the feelings of the fans on that? I mean, have they looked into the possibility of keeping San Siro and redeveloping it?
from my perspective, it's really split into two sides. So there are one side that want to keep San Siro and maybe make it more modern, but keep the same venue, and another side maybe more into the economic side of a known stadium, etc. That doesn't really care about San Siro, unfortunately, and they just want the new stadium with those modern lines, etc. So I think there are really two parts, and I don't know actually which one is more is more relevant, because on my side there's no doubt I would keep San Siro no matter what. Many stadiums showed us the possibility to renew the stadiums without destroying it. We can mention Bernabeu in Madrid. They have plenty of remodelations. We can mention the Camp Nou in Barcelona, which will be ready in 2026, if I'm not wrong. We can mention many others. So I believe there could be a way we can keep San Siro, but as of today, unfortunately, it seems that the future is not on the same page.
What I can add to that, and going back to what I was saying before about the fact that most probably there are not many cities with winning teams as such as Milan, I don't think, and I'm pretty sure about this, I don't think there is any other city that has so many good teams that has only one stadium. Like Milan has one stadium, and it has been this way for the past, 60 years, maybe 70. When Inter moved to San Siro, from back then till today, it has only been San Siro. And I wonder why down the line, even Berlusconi or Moratti didn't decide to just get their own ground and build a new stadium. So the problem that we have and that we are facing today is that you cannot renovate San Siro because two teams are playing all the time. So you never have 2 weeks of empty stadium to do your job and work on it. You always have to prepare to the next game. So it's maybe you have sometimes 3 or 4 days max to work. And then you have attendance and you have security reasons for not really having, stuff around pipes and all the works. So the solution which was found originally was that AC Milan would move. I think Berlusconi was still there at the time. It was 2014 or 13, something like that. Berlusconi bought an area where actually the AC Milan headquarters is right now. And he said, I'm going to just build a new stadium here. It was like 5 minutes from San Siro. Everybody was kind of happy. Personally, I was happy because if I have to tear down San Siro, I prefer to leave it to Inter. It's a monument of my city. If I have to see it on the ground, I prefer to see it full with Inter fans, although it pains me, of course. And then that was quickly dismantled, the idea of moving to that ground for whatever political reasons. They went to court, and I think they are still in court for that. And then both AC Milan and Inter bought land outside of Milan recently. AC Milan officially did it. Inter, I don't think they officially bought the land, but they were looking into the land. And it felt like they were bluffing a bit with the municipality to force them to sell San Siro to the two teams. And it worked, because ultimately the municipality decided to sell the area where San Siro is to the two clubs. But instead of renovating the current version of San Siro, they will basically build a new one 100 meters down the line. It's basically it. We're going to play there, and then a new stadium will rise.
It also seems a bit of never-ending story, because to be honest, it's been at least 25 years that we hear about potential projects to leave San Siro and build something else. I remember in early 2000, our president Moratti speaking about this project, but then in the end, nothing happened. So also, as of today, there are a lot of discussions. So 1 week it seems the new projects are done, and the following week we are still back to the municipality that potentially can sell the stadium to the two clubs. So we don't really know what's going on. The real thing is that apart from the area purchase from AC Milan, as of today, we don't have actual project. So we have projects, but nothing really started yet. That's the point. So I really hope a solution can be found to keep San Siro. That's all.
James, one thing to add here, and because you might not know, but I'm sure you can imagine Italy is not the easiest country when it comes to bureaucracy and public works and municipality agreements and blah blah blah. Mm-hmm. But Milan and its people have always been really blatant about the fact that Milan was the only city in Italy where things were actually happening. Like, we need to do this. Okay, let's do it. We need to start this project. Done. Like, we have skyscrapers coming up like mushrooms in the last 10 years. And still, the stadium is the only topic where we could not get things moving anyway. Like, that's incredible if you think about it. Because Roma, for example, they have been trying to build their own stadium since 20 years as well. But Roma is a complex city where you have a lot of historical monuments in the ground. Every time you break land, you find something, and then you have the municipality, which is huge, a lot of corruption, blah, blah, blah. Milan is a flat plain where nothing is underground, so you can break ground pretty easily. You have so much money and so many interests that usually there would be no problem in constructing something. Yet, still, the stadium is the biggest problem we had in decades.
Well, maybe there's some divine intervention there, and San Siro will be saved. But I think it would be incredibly sad if the San Siro did have to go. I wouldn't want to be part of the team demolishing that. I think there needs to be some way to save it, because it's a huge monument for the city, and I think it should be preserved. Okay, so guys, what of the future for both clubs then? I mean, you've both won Serie A this decade. Serie A has become, I'd actually say at the moment, of all the leagues in Europe, the one that's probably the best to watch on a regular basis would be Serie A. Not necessarily for the football or the quality of the football, but for the fact that it's a lot more competitive. Napoli won the league recently, and there's been different champions. Juventus seem to have fallen away a bit. So what do we think that the future is for both clubs and for Serie A as well?
Yeah, so the league definitely improved compared to 10 years ago at least. And in regards of our two clubs, I would say that after a very dark decade in terms of sporting results, and not only that, and I'm referring to the post-2010 period, both teams have returned to the top of Italian football, are once again shining on the European stage. As we've seen in the last season, we had the Champions League semi-finals. So it was a great result overall. And so I think it's fair to say that both clubs are well positioned for the future. That said, nothing is certain, especially in modern football, where many things have changed and economic factors have become even more crucial to staying afloat and competing at the highest level. But so unexpected change can always happen. But generally, I would say, I repeat that I see both clubs well positioned, in my opinion.
Well, I have a less optimistic view of Italian football and Milan teams as well, mainly because of the foreign properties that we have in Milan. Both Inter and Milan have not proved to be the most solid and reliable lately. And I don't like to play this game because it feels like a rat race for the Italian leagues, because in the end, you don't have the economical power to sustain the evolution of modern capitalism in football. And that's why I think they are trying to accelerate the stadium discussion, because if you don't own your own stadium, you are missing out on a lot of earnings that are key to compete at the highest European level. But all in all, we have the Winter Olympics coming, so I'm sure in Milan we are going to see a lot of investment in the short period on, let's say, sport facilities and activities and clubs. In terms of AC Milan specifically, we are not in our best moment nowadays, but I think we are going to change properties in the next couple of years, because we are just going from private equity to private equity. So I hope that down the line we're going to find somebody that really cares about football results as much as profit, which is possible. And in terms of the appeal that the Serie A has from outside, I'm pleased to hear it. I guess we all have that feeling of the grass is always greener elsewhere. So when I look around and I look at the Premier League and I look at the Liga or even the Bundes, I still feel it's a better entertainment rather than watching smaller teams coming to San Siro and just stay in their own end and hoping not to get any goals. I don't know, but that's a cultural thing. Italians always like to hate their football, but in the end the results are backing them up in a positive way, and sometimes we win more than we expect. So let's see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, I would recommend watching football in Italy. The atmosphere is always good. You can have a beer in the stadium as well, which you can't do in Spain or Portugal or Argentina, for example. And there's a great football culture there as well. So it really is worth going. But yeah,
sorry, James. One more thing I wanted to add about the Italian movement in general. I think that in a paradoxical way, COVID was a good thing for stadium attendance. Like the years before COVID, even in Milan, you could see the attendance going down and down and down, like literally down. After COVID, there was a resurgence of people wanting to be together and being a part of the community. And I think Milan and Inter have been almost always sold out since COVID. It's unbelievable. Even smaller games, 70,000. Italian Cup, 40,000. Like these are numbers we never had in the last 20 years.
Yeah, and particularly as well, that Italy was one of the hardest countries hit by COVID, and also the Milan region, Bergamo and Milan itself. So yeah, people have probably following that, looking for that social aspect and discovering a love of football again.
The crazy thing is that now we have Monza as well in Serie A, and like Monza is literally in the outskirts of Milan. Like I went to Monza 3 times in the last 3 years to the away game, and it took me less than going to Duomo. Like that's how close it is.
Yeah. That was Berlusconi as well, wasn't it? Before he died, I think he started putting his money into Monza.
Indeed. And now Galliani is there. Galliani has always been the second man for Berlusconi at AC Milan.
Yeah, it's interesting in Italy. I mean, it was usually rich men, owning the clubs, and now there's a lot more foreign investment, as has been the case in other countries. But we will see how that all pans out. But it used to be traditionally, an Italian makes a lot of money, buys a football club, funds the football club, but it looks like that may be changing. Okay, so to wrap up then, guys. So why should someone come to Milan to watch football? Sell the city and sell the experience of San Siro, either for a Milan or Inter game, or indeed the derby, to someone.
Well, it's pretty easy. You just need to listen to this podcast, because we basically explain most of the reasons why you should come to Milan, both for a sports event, so a football match, or other things, because you can find many things in Milan, starting from the historical part. So you have plenty of monuments which are really historical and good to see, starting from the cathedral and the castle. So back in 700, 800 years ago. So you have plenty of things. Then you have fashion, but this is something I really don't care. So if you want to come here, we strongly suggest to go to the stadium for the reason we mentioned before. First of all, it could be the first the last time you can see a football match in San Siro Stadium, which is a monument, definitely. And second of all, because the atmosphere is not comparable with any other stadium in my opinion, or at least few of them. So these are the reason why people should come here to visit the city.
I'm going to be shorter, and I think that San Siro especially, I mean, I would not recommend Milan in general unless you have interest in, again, design, fashion, football, those aspects where we are at our best. But Milan is not Florence, is not Venice, is not Rome, is not Pompeii. We are not a museum, but San Siro is a museum. And as soon as you understand the fact that you don't have, the facilities of a US stadium or of a Premier League stadium, but you are in a museum, I mean, history is there to watch and to feel. And why else would you go into a museum? Because they have, better elevators, or because there is history to watch?
Yeah, I think that's a good place to end this third episode of the Football Culture Podcast. Okay, thanks to Federico and Jacobo for being guests today. Follow us on social media, the Football Culture Podcast. We're on all of it: Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Blue Sky, TikTok, etc. Like and subscribe to the podcast, and follow, and any comments, etc. likes are welcome. And we'll see you next time when we discuss another football culture somewhere in the world.